Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang.
Selamat siang ya.
Ya, salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Yang saya hormati Associated Professor Dr. Muhammad Fadli selaku pembicara pada webinar kita hari ini. Kemudian Bapak dan Ibu dosen farmasi yang saya hormati pula serta mahasiswa farmasi S1 Farmasi Jakarta Global University yang lain. Segala syukur senantiasa kehadirat Tuhan Yang Maha Esa telah melimpahkan rahmat dan berkahnya kepada kita semua sehingga hari ini kita dapat dipertemukan mengikuti acara webinar yang diadakan oleh Jakarta Global University. Sholawat serta salam selalu tercurah bagi Nabi besar kita Nabi Muhammad SAW beserta keluarga, sahabat dan para pengikutnya hingga akhir zaman. Tak lupa kami mengucapkan selamat datang pada peserta webinar pada hari ini yang memiliki tema Clinical Management of Confirmed COVID-19 Case in Adult and Pediatric. Sebagaimana kita ketahui pada akhir-akhir ini kasus COVID di Indonesia sangat meningkat drastis ya. Jadi sangat diperlukan pengetahuan tentang manajemen terkait dengan penanganan pasien COVID-19 ini. Webinar ini ditujukan untuk semua mahasiswa farmasi Jakarta Global University. Dan saya mengucapkan banyak terima kasih kepada seluruh pihak yang telah mendukung acara ini. Mungkin itu saja yang dapat saya sampaikan pada siang hari ini. Mohon maaf jika dalam penyelenggaraan acara ini banyak terdapat kekurangan. Semoga webinar ini dapat mendatangkan banyak manfaat bagi kita semua. Selamat mengikuti webinar untuk para peserta. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih. Pak Nopra.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih kepada Bu Rizky untuk pembukaannya. Sebelum kita memulai acara ini juga kepada peserta diharapkan untuk mute supaya tidak ada suara ketika speaker kita lagi menyampaikan lecture. Terus juga untuk videonya dinyalakan. Dan di akhir acara akan ada sesi tanya jawab di mana kalian bisa sebutkan pertanyaannya dulu di kolom chat dan akan dibacakan setelah akhir acara. Oke, itu saja dari saya. Kepada Associate Professor Dr. Fadli dipersilakan untuk lecture-nya.
Oke, terima kasih Miss Navratilova. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Terima kasih juga kepada Dekan Dean Fakulti Farmasi Jakarta Global University, Bu Rizky, dan sahabat lama saya, Pak Beni, dan juga semua mahasiswa dan JGU, serta dosen-dosen dari JGU. Saya ucapkan terima kasih kerana sudi menjemput saya sebagai penyampai ataupun dosen tamu ya di dalam webinar pada kali ini. Okay, minta maaf kerana saya lambat bagi date. Maklum sekarang ni agak busy kerana seperti mana Miss Navratilova beritahu bahawa saya sekarang ni banyak ditugaskan untuk mengendali operasi di MSU Medical Center. MSU sekarang telah memiliki sebuah hospital sebanyak ada 250 beds dan kita beroperasi hampir 2 tahun. Yesterday kita dah sambut ulang tahun yang kedua. Dan besok akan sambut lagi acaranya ulang tahun bersama consultants pula bersama Tan Sri. So syukur alhamdulillah MSU Medical Center semakin maju dan semakin dikenali. Malah for your information, kita punya video klip semuanya untuk mengenai COVID ini sudah pun sampai di negeri Eropah. Kerana kita di MSU Medical Center telah menjalankan satu kempen untuk check COVID drive-thru test dan ia mendapat sambutan yang begitu hangat di rakyat Malaysia. Saya mengambil kesempatan pada isu yang sekarang ini saya ingin share mengenai management of patient confirm COVID patient di antara di kalangan adult dan juga peds, kanak-kanak. Dan sebenarnya apa yang saya share ni adalah daripada guideline daripada Kementerian Kesihatan Malaysia. Sepanjang saya bertugas di MSU Medical Center ini, kita akan sentiasa diberikan guideline oleh kementerian dan kita seharusnya ikut guideline tersebut agar semua praktis dan itu seragam dan ianya terbukti selamat untuk pesakit dan juga untuk kaki tangan ataupun frontliner untuk menangani kes COVID ini. So sekali lagi saya ucapkan ribuan terima kasih kepada dekan dan juga semua dosen serta mahasiswa yang sudi jemput saya menjadi dosen tamu pada kali ini. So saya nak share saya punya slide, boleh ya? Okay. Alright. Okey, topik yang saya bawakan pada kali ini adalah Clinical Management of Confirmed COVID-19 Case in Adult and Pediatrics. I'm delivered this topic actually from the Ministry of Health Malaysia guideline. And sebelum itu saya cuba memperkenalkan, ini adalah MSU Medical Center yang sudah beroperasi selama 2 tahun, berada di dalam kampus MSU juga. Nanti semua dosen dan mahasiswa boleh datang ke MSU Medical Center dan juga MSU. Kita ada Faculty School of Pharmacy dan juga MSU. For your information, our pharmacy also our staff, our dosen di MSU juga involved in hospital pharmacy di MSU Medical Center. Okay. Dalam sharing saya kali ini, saya divide into 2 part, which is part A, we clinical management for the adult, COVID-19 case in adult. So I start with the staging, clinical staging of syndrome associated with COVID-19. I think that one is everybody aware. We have 5 stages, or sometimes in Malaysia we call it 5 categories. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4 and stage 5. And lately, I think last week, start from last week, our ministry dah pun mula melancarkan projek di mana collaboration between Ministry of Health Hospital, KKM Hospital, government hospital. We're going to be shared their expertise and facilities with private hospital. So how they are sharing, the main collaboration is between 3 categories. Number 1 is for the non-COVID patient, government may transfer their patient to our private hospital, including MSU Medical Center. And number 2, they may transfer us a COVID patient, which is stage 1 or stage 2. Or we allow to receive a patient in category or stage 1 and stage 2. Been treated in our MSU Medical Center. So that is category number 2. Category number 3, in our hospital, also we have to manage our own patient until stage 5. So that is a 3 category of patients, and that is a collaboration all about. Last Saturday also we have another second meeting with Ministry of Health, which is we're going to start this collaboration. So meaning that COVID-19, we work together, government and also the private hospital like MSU Medical Center is a private hospital, going to work together with government hospital in terms of facilities and as well in terms of expertise, including doctors, nurses, pharmacies, and etc. So that is a stage, I go back to the stages, even clinical stage. Stage 1, asymptomatic. Semua dah berkata-kata sekarang ni, ramai yang tidak ada gejala, no symptom, but they have been affected with the COVID-19. So we call it stage 1. Stage 2, symptomatic, there is a symptom, and some sort like a no smell, tak ada lagi rasa bau, rasa demam, batuk, sore throat. That means they have that symptom, but no pneumonia. So we category as a stage 2. In stage 3, there is a symptom plus pneumonia. In stage 4, symptom, pneumonia, and required supplemental oxygen. We call it intubations. Yeah? Patient need to intubate. And maybe we can transfer to ICU and also HDU. So that sometimes we go for the portable intubation in the ward. That means the patient definitely need support of oxygen supply. And the most dangerous is stage 5, critically ill, with multi-organ involvement. There is 5 stages. And general care, patient COVID-19 illness should receive symptomatic treatment such as antipyretic, optimal nutritionals, and maintain a fluid electrolyte balance as well. And also COVID-19 should have close monitoring and see patient have regular check then investigation through in the lab and as well and chest x-ray as well. So the laboratory result parameter is important, and plus those need a bronchodilator. So we have to use the MDI with special. We cannot use nebulizer. So we have to inform all the clinics, including the GP, general practitioner. So we cannot treat a patient using nebulizer because nebulizer will be shared with the other patient. So definitely cannot. And we have to use the MDI, method dose inhaler with the spacer. So there is a general care for the COVID-19 patient. And continue with that, those have oxygen supply, we not necessarily go for the intubation. So we start with the self proning. So that means every 2 hours, in 2 hours, every 30 minutes, we try to rotate, they try to change their position. So to improve their breathing. So we go for that stage first. And if not working, then only we go for the we call it high flow nasal oxygenations, and which is we call it non-invasive ventilations. And if we need support with the antiviral and antibiotics, so we go for that. So the stages actually general care, we start treat the symptomatic. If they have a fever, we treat with the paracetamol for the fever, sore throat, and etc. And then if need oxygen support, we go for the self proning first. And if not working, then only go for the high flow nasal oxygenation. If not working, then only we go for the intubation, that means oxygen support. If not, then we go for the prescribed antiviral and antibiotics. So this is a treatment. That is where pharmacy come in to support the COVID-19 patient with the pharmacological treatment. Okay, and then next. Okay. And number 2, we also must aware their clinical progression of COVID-19. So as a pharmacist, I think we should understand with this. Majority of the COVID-19 patient, they only play in the clinical category 1 or category 2. Okay, hello. Yeah. And which is category 1, patients no symptomatic, there is no symptom at all. Category 2 with the symptom but no pneumonia, and category 3 is have a symptom plus pneumonia. So majority in Malaysia also almost I think 90% of our patient is play in a category of category 1 and 3, 2 and 3, which is stage 1, 2 and stage 3. So patient with risk factor, that means then we have to list it below. Then we have to go for the consider as a severe diseases, and we have to take clinical action on that. In patient with So if the patient who deteriorate, the disease often progress to a more severe stage needing oxygen supplementation and ICU care. This deterioration can be due to the following reason, which is CRS, cytokine release syndrome is increased. That means the inflammation is already worsened, many multi-organ involved, and also viral effects also involved with the immune system, and therefore we need immunomodulatory drugs also have to given in early stage. And also we know that those patients have comorbid like hypertension, asthma, diabetic, and so on. So we have to be careful on that. And also the most important, the most dangerous is those patients have a thromboembolism, and that is due to the nosocomial pneumonia, and as well that is quite dangerous for the patient. So we have to be careful how to treat the patient, and we have to aware the clinical progression of COVID-19 patient, right? So from the clinical progressions, we understand their clinical stage, then we go for the specific treatment. Generally, there is no specific treatment for COVID-19 patients. Yeah? So normal patient is we just monitoring monitoring the parameters like dehydration and so on. So, but in Malaysia, for your information, we treat a patient with the hydroxychloroquine in the early stage, but lately we already withdraw that hydroxychloroquine as the first treatment, and we go for the antiviral favipiravir. Later on, I will show you the favipiravir dose and so on. And then the treatment regimen should below is likely change new evidence and kindly discuss with the ID physician or ID pediatrician for the specific treatment. So with that specific treatment, I think we have to refer to the table 2, which is that is a guideline from the Ministry of Health Malaysia. For the stage 1, which is asymptomatic, there is no symptom, we're not going to treat anything, we just monitor them, and normally we quarantine. In Malaysia, for those in stage 1 and stage 2, we already allow them to be quarantined at home. I think last year in 2020, all stage 1, we quarantine them at a hospital or the quarantine center. But nowadays, I think last 2 weeks, we already allow the patients being quarantined at home with and then the patient have to declare their status through the center, we call it CAC, and by using the mobile app. So I mean the patient have to inform their BP, their temperature, and so on through the mobile app. And we going to monitor in the one center, we call it CAC center. And if necessary, then only the Ministry of Health staff, we're going to fetch them. We're going to fetch them, then we bring them to the hospital. Sorry, I have to answer the WhatsApp is important. You know, working in a hospital is like that. Sorry, yeah. Okay, there is a stage 1, how we treat our patient in the stage 1. For the stage 2, it's the same. There is no treatment required, but with the close observation with vital signs and oxygen saturation, as state is monitoring guideline. And we look for warning sign and each review. So this what I said is stage 1 and stage 2 in Malaysia, they can be quarantined at home, not necessarily in the quarantine center or hospital, but they have to be observed by the center, and patients have to update their status every, I think 3 times a day or 2 times a day. I'm not very sure, but last Tuesday, I think it's about 2 times a day. They have to update their status through the mobile apps. And stage 3, generally no treatment as well, but we close observation of vital signs and we give an oxygen saturation and state is monitoring guideline. Sometimes the stage 3, we're going to treat as a stage 4 as well, which is for those patients aged more than 50 years old and patient have end stage of renal failure, and we treat them as a category 4 patient, even though actually the actual is still under category 3, but we give a treatment under category 4. Yeah. Okay. Warning sign that predict deteriorations. This is a thing you have to monitor. Number 1, if their fever still persistent, and then lethargy, anorexia, cough still persistent, and then the most important, we look at the SpO2. Oxygen saturation is less than 95. That means they have a difficulty of breathing. And if the respiratory rate more than 25, that means frequent kerap tarik nafas, that means some sort of SOB. And that is, we look at the clinical data and support with the CRP, that means infections value, CRP, C creatinine protein, which is if more than 10 milligram per liter, and or here in the note, standard is a more than 5 milligram per deciliter. That means we know that patient is been infected. Also, we dropping absolute lymphocyte. That means count. That means our antibody actually become low. And X-ray also show there is a pneumonia features. And also with the clinical features, SpO2 less than 95. That means so we taking that this patient sudah go for deterioration stage. That means we can declare as a stage 4, and we need support with the oxygen, supplement of oxygen. Yeah. Okay, so when that kind of status, there is a clinical finding, and also X-ray finding, and also the lab finding, and we treat as a stage 4 patient. So the treatment for the stage 4, of course, we start with the antiviral treatment. As I mentioned before, we stop already use the hydroxychloroquine, we stop and we go the favipiravir. Even though in Malaysia, that medication is not yet registered in Malaysia, but with the special permit under Ministry of Health, we allow to take that medication, and we serve the medication under the specific indication for treat COVID-19 patients. The recommended dose is 1,800 milligram twice a day for the day 1, then followed by 800 milligram twice a day for the 5 or 10 days. And of course, we are aware there is that medication have a teratogenic effect, which is a very potential for the baby. So we are going to advise the patients cannot pregnant lah at that time. And number 2, we also support with the subcutaneous interferon. We start with the subcutaneous interferon beta 1A, 44 micromicrostat, and every other days. And also, we only play with the 3 or 5 doses. Then we also support with the immunomodulatory treatment, which is the basic treatment we are going to use is dexamethasone, ataupun we going to use methylprednisolone. Dexamethasone dose is 6 milligram once a day for 5 days or 7 days, about 1 week. And the most common medicine in Malaysia, normally they go the methylprednisolone, which is 0.5 milligram to 1 milligram per kg for the 5 days and 7 days. Yeah. So that is treatment we use. We use antiviral. Then also sometimes we support with the subcutaneous interferon, and we plus the using the steroid. Yeah, we consider as an immunomodulatory treatment. And most common medications in Malaysia now we use favipiravir, which is the dose common just 1,100 milligram BD for day 1 or 600 milligram BD. Some doctors use 1,800 milligram BD or 800 milligram BD for day 2 to day 5. So it depends, and this is structure. In Malaysia, already have a generic. We get it from Glenmark, and also from I forgot, but the most popular brand is Avigan, and now generic name already available in Malaysia. We're using the Glenmark and from the Indian company, because it's quite expensive also, these medications. And other treatment, we're using the IV toxiclamide and also the convalescent plasma. That means we give plasma to the patients. Yeah? And those having a thromboembolism treatment, we using the prophylaxis therapy, HVTE. Normally, when you say the thromboembolism treatment, we were going to use the low molecular weight heparin, some sort like flexiparin or avoparin. And then treatment for stage 5, that is later on is more on intensive care preparedness, which is we monitor their BP. We can control their BP by using the adrenaline or no adrenaline, and maybe can use the we call it dopamine and so on. So that is more on ICU care treatment. Okay. Another stage treatment we use is to treat the thromboembolism. So this one, normally patient at the stage 4 and stage 5 may develop VTE, venous thromboembolism. So the main concerns how to treat the VTE, we're going to use low molecular weight heparin, which is the most common one is enoxaparin ataupun flexiparin. So now I think most of the doctors consultant we're going to use enoxaparin, which is the dose is going to be 0.5 milligram per kg per daily. But if the creatinine clearance less than affect their kidney, so we're going to use 5,000 unit twice a day or 3 times a day. So this is the most important, is try to prevent ataupun prophylactics, prevent the coagulations, to worsen the thromboembolism. And sometimes the doctors use the oral antiplatelet as well, which is Pradaxa, the most common trade name of the antiplatelet drug is Pradaxa, or ataupun Plavix. It's the same thing yang doktor guna untuk for the cardiac drug. But of course, because we need fast action, we go for low molecular weight heparin. Yeah. This is thromboembolism. I think most of the pharmacy students aware what is DVT, deep vein thrombosis. So if you notice, the coagulation of the blood in the deep veins, ataupun di dalam salur darah kita. So most common treatment is we using the low molecular weight heparin, some sort like enoxaparin ataupun flexiparin. That is the most common drug. Fast actions, but anyway, it's a safe. We're not using heparin anymore. We use the low molecular weight heparin, which is easily to monitor their blood clotting. Yeah. As you know, that is heparin is considered like we call it, what do you call it? Narrow therapeutic agents, narrow therapeutic index. So we have to do the close monitoring, DTM, drug the therapy monitoring. So that's why we use the LMVH, because less side effect compared with the conventional heparin. Okay. Pulmonary embolism also will be appear in the COVID-19 patient for the stage 4 or stage 5. Normally at the stage 5. So the same things, how we going to treat the pulmonary embolism is we use the full dose of anticoagulation in patient, which is we also look into D-dimer. We look into their we call it test hormone blood clot as well. So acute worsening hypoxemia, blood pressure, tachycardia with imaging finding not consistent in worsening 90. And also if we find out that unexplained right heart strain or intracardiac thrombus, clotting vascular, so we treat them as a pulmonary embolism and we using the full dose of anticoagulation. So there is a treatment guideline from the Ministry of Health. We treat pulmonary using anticoagulation. Okay, how to monitor the clinical monitoring in the COVID-19? So as we know, there is a, just now we have mentioned, there is 5 stages of COVID patients, or 5 categories of COVID patients. For the clinical stage 1, or category 1, which is asymptomatics, we just monitor through full blood count, renal profile, liver function test, random blood sugar, and also we go for the chest X-ray. There is a basics parameter we monitor, and normally doctor will monitor twice a day. It's the same thing. Just now I mentioned Ministry of Health in Malaysia, we allow a patient to do the home monitoring. So the patient also need report their progress, their status to the center twice a day also. So category number 2, which is symptomatic without pneumonia. Same thing, we look into it, which is FBC, renal profile, liver function test, CRP. We look at their what we call it inflammation or infections status, and also we are studied bi-weekly and we repeat indicated, and then also we look at their full blood count as well. So normally we look into day 5 and day 10. If there worsens, we go for the chest X-ray and we look at the ECG as well. There is a parameter or laboratory and radiological monitoring for the stage 2. Sorry, for stage 3, it's same thing, but is we going to monitor more frequent. Same parameters, same stool, FBC, RP, LFT, and random blood sugar as well. It's same thing, ECG, chest X-ray, but we monitor 6 to 8 hourly. So that meaning that for the stage 3, we're going to close monitoring. Yeah. And stage 4, pneumonia. So we are monitor more frequent by 4 hourly, and is the best we monitor at ICU. We already go to the ICU, and if needed, we support them with the intubation. Later on, I will show you what is the intubation. I think you already knows what is intubation all about. And critical illness, I mean, 100% at ICU level. There is a stage 5. So there is a how we are monitor, how we evaluate and manage them, and then how we're going to treat a patient for the adult, for COVID-19 patient in adult. In pediatric, which is a part B, I think I skipped the introduction. Everybody knows already what is a coronavirus. And yeah, clinical stages is almost the same as adult. Is stage 1 asymptomatic, stage 2 is no pneumonia, but symptomatic, consider mild disease. Moderate disease is with the pneumonia symptom plus pneumonia, and stage 4 pneumonia plus oxygen. We need oxygen, and stage 5 is level. So this is the same thing. For the adult, not much different with the peds. So, but we also look into their PO2, same thing, less than 95% and 94%. Adult, just now we look at the less than 95, but for the children, we go for the less than 94. And then we also look into the dehydration, difficulty of feeding, risk liver enzyme. Yeah, this is liver function test. We will look into ALT and also ASP. So there is a liver function test. We look at the inflammation at the liver. And also we look at the myocardial effect and raise creatinine kinase and troponin for the stage 4 of in the peds. Yeah. So yeah, for the peds we rate as if the respiratory rate more than 60 for the infant and more than 50 for the 2 and 11 months, and also 40 for the children with more than 1 year old. There is a parameter we look into the tachypnea. It's the same thing. Majority children are asymptomatic stage 1, also a stage 2, and in Malaysia, not many peds goes to the stage 3 or 4 and 5 yet at the moment, Alhamdulillah. But Ministry of Health already give a guideline. The guideline is different with the adult. Okay, laboratory investigations. Yeah, we still relevant or blood tests required, and then also we look at the full blood count, and also we look at the renal profile, and as well for the LRT, respiratory lower tract infections symptom. If there is a deteriorating severe consistent with ARDS or shocks, that means anaphylactic shock, so definitely we have to support them at the ICU. Yeah, so also we monitor the cytokine release syndrome, CRS, and also we monitor the blood pressure as well. So hopefully the hypoxemia and biomarkers will not give a problem to the kid. So far, I think we treat for the children, we treat a patient as a SARI patient. That means severe acute respiratory infection as well. So not much different how we're going to treat the influenza patient as well. No, but we also include the antiviral. At the moment, favipiravir not really recommended for the children. We're using the remdesivir at the moment, but it's very difficult to use that antiviral. Okay, I think the same. It's the same thing as adult. The only thing is we going to monitor 2 or 3 times per week if there is concern for vaccine disease, and also we have a certain diagnosis test and decided on case by case basis and shall be performed when indicated. So meaning that if for the peds, we going to be individualized monitoring and individualized treatment by the pediatrician. Yeah. Treatment for the ped, yes, there is no evidence of any specific treatment yet, and normally we treat the symptomatics by using the antipyretic, by using the steroid, corticosteroid, and antiviral. It's the same thing as adult treatment. And general care for the children, yes, we start with the antipyretic, and normally paracetamol 50 mg per kg per dose and every 6 hours, ataupun the maximum dose is 75 mg per kg per day or 4 gram per day. There is no difference with the standard ataupun population's dose for the paracetamol. And we also using the oxygen supplementation by using low flow nasal cannula, and also we using the routine blood gases, which is a high frequency nasal cannula as well. If is needed, which is if you look at the SpO2 less than 94%, yeah, 94%. Okay. We also monitor the fluid management by using the impermeable oxygen exchange. We also not using the nebulizing. Nebulizer definitely we not use for the peds, even for adult when you use to treat a patient. So we only use the method dose inhaler because, as you know, that nebulizer machine are going to be shared with the other. We worry the cross infection. That's why we are to use nebulizations. We use the method dose inhaler with the spacer. Yeah. Antibiotics for the peds, we start with the oral amoxicillin. And in Malaysia, we always use the augmentin, which is amoxicillin plus calcium carbonate, which is that one is what we call it the new generation of amoxicillin, because as you know, the amoxicillin resistant already because beta lactamase resistant. That's why we have to include the calcium carbonate to boost their effectiveness. So we're using the augmentin, the most common drug. And also we use the ceforaxime, which is a second generation of cephalosporin. In Malaysia, I think even though the guidelines say that mild cases, moderate cases, we use a stream drug, but through my experience, I think the doctors now don't want to take try to overcome the issue of resistance. As most of the doctors, either mild or moderate, they are straight away they go for second generation of ceforaxime, which is a ceforazime, or the trade name in Malaysia we use as Zenacef, and the most common one is augmentin, which is amoxicillin plus carbonate. And if a typical pneumonia, the doctors use the azithromycin. I've come across the doctors in Malaysia use combination. They're using the ceforaxime plus azithromycin, meaning that they go the stat dose, combine ceforaxime, the high dose 1.5 gram, stat dose, and plus azithromycin a stat dose as well. And then they taper down with the ceforaxime alone or augmentin alone. So that is common practice in Malaysia. But anyway, they are still not away from the guideline. We use the amoxicillin, ceforaxime ataupun amoxicillin plus clavulanic, just augmentin, plus macrolide group or azithromycin. For the Spexif, they use the third generation cephalosporin, which is the trade name in Malaysia. The most common one, we call it Rocephin. Sometimes the patient cannot tolerate because Rocephin, I think the side effect quite serious, especially in the GI side effect. Patient cannot tolerate with the vomiting. And sometimes patient feel pain taking the cephalosporin. It's different. Sometimes the patient can adopt and he goes to the cephalosporin. Or we can add the clindamycin as well for the sepsis. Yeah. And others antibiotics, they may consider sometimes you use the quinolone, but it's very rare. Quinolone been used, quinolone group been used, but normally they go for the first generation, which is amoxicillin group. They go for the second generation. If not working, they're going to go up to the third generation as well, which is cephalosporin. Cefotaxime, trade name is what we call it, Rocephin, ceftriaxone. Yeah, this is most common antibiotic used in Malaysia. Steroid, the same. We use when the patient have exacerbation of asthma. Most common steroid we use is dexamethasone ataupun methylprednisolone. But for the kid, I think we go for dexamethasone tablet or syrup. Yeah? And dexamethasone shows that it works, and sometimes we no need to use the oxygen support when we use dexamethasone. Okay, that is most common dexamethasone. We using 0.150 milligram per kg per dose, and once daily. Maximum is 6 milligram. And metapristynol is 8 milligram per kg. Once a day as well, maximum 0.32 milligram. Prednisolone we use oral, 1 milligram per kg once daily. Maximum dose is 40 milligram. Normal dose, doctors, we use the IV first, then we continue with oral prednisolone. Yeah? Either is using a tablet or syrup. For the severe cases, we using the intravenous immunoglobulin and IVIG. The most common drug is immune globulin in this human, which is 10% ataupun 1%, used for the patients. And then we start with the immunomodulator against COVID-19 with the specific antiviral. We prefer for the PID, we using remdesivir, but in Malaysia, I think due to remdesivir is not available yet, we using lopinavir ataupun ritonavir. Yeah, but lately I think Ministry of Health we using the special permit order. We ordered the remdesivir already. Yeah, this is the most common medication being suggested by our pediatricians, Ministry of Health, using the remdesivir. There is a dose which is 5 milligram per kg by IV, loading as a loading dose, and followed by every 24 hours, 2.5 milligram per kg per dose. And normally we treat for 5 days or maximum is 10 days. Yeah. And then we also use the H2 receptor medications. And normally there is a guideline, but I think not so far. We still not go for the interleukin 6 cytokine storm yet. In Malaysia, not many this kind of cases, but there is a guideline already been published to all the the practitioner. Yeah, there is a dose of lopinavir and ritonavir. We calculate by the body weight as well, and neonate above 14 days, and also for the children, normally we go for 300 milligram per meter squared dose. Also, we go by the body weight. If a 3 to 5 kgs is 1 milliliter, 12 hourly, and we take we increase the dose based on their body weight. For the tablet, normally we go for 400 milligram, 12 hourly. Yeah. So duration of the treatment for the antiviral, for the PID, we go for 1 week, or the most is 2 weeks. Yeah. And if not cured, then we look into other diseases, because PIDs being studies shows that sometimes it's not really due to the COVID, they're due to the other disease, some sort like other disease, we call it viral Kawasaki and so on, maybe influenza and so on, not really for the COVID. So there is the guideline for the PID. And now I would like to show you, share the intubations and ventilators COVID-19. Even though that is not related with the pharmacy, as a pharmacy student, I think as a pharmacy student, we should aware there is some sort of like mechanical interventions done by the normally NS, ataupun ID physician practice intubate a patient, which is the patient really need intubation. Yeah. So normal practice intubations normally for the patient have a pneumonia, or they have shown that respiratory failure. So, or as a 2 week of bleeding, so that means the patients have new intubate. Anesthetist, no, hospital normally done by anesthetist ataupun ID physician, emergency physician intubate. In our MSU Medical Center, normally we call the NS to do the intubate. Yeah, they can intubate at the emergency department ataupun dekat ICU. So after intubate, we create a pathway of the oxygen masuk ke lung, then and we attach with the mechanical this is intubation. Then we attach with the mechanical ventilator. So the mechanical ventilator is some sort like paru-paru lah yang coordinate the oxygen exchange, yang supply oxygen kepada patient kita. So in the ward we have two ventilator. One we call it a fixed ventilator, then the other one is we call it a portable ventilator. So most of the hospital will have at least, I think, about 3 or 5 ventilators. Either is fixed ventilators ataupun portable ventilators. Normally always standby, and we're going to use a patient for those who cannot resolve with the self-proning. Dia kita dah positionkan dia lah, terbaring, baringkan dia, apa lagi, kita terlentangkan dia apa semua, still cannot have. Then only we use the ventilator. Yeah, so that is mechanical ventilator for the COVID-19 patient. I think that's all for me. Thank you very much. Hopefully, I think I can share something with you all. And it's not my note. I'm copy from the Ministry of Health guideline. So they've been issued to all the hospital, and we received that guideline, and we should practice and into our patient in our hospital. So with that, I think thank you very much. I serahkan kepada kita punya pengurus, Miss Navratilova. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much to Associate Professor Dr. Fadli untuk penjelasan daripada treatment untuk COVID in adult and pediatric. Selanjutnya adalah pertanyaan daripada sesi tanya jawab. So, untuk student atau mahasiswa dari Farmasi GGU, kalau ada pertanyaan dipersilakan untuk raise hand atau juga boleh di komen, dipersilakan dari sekarang.
Cika tadi katanya mau bertanya, ada Cika.
Siapa, Bu?
Cika.
Iya. Silakan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum.
Nama saya Cika, Prof. Saya ingin bertanya, apakah di Malaysia pasien-pasien COVID juga diberikan suplemen seperti vitamin C dan vitamin D dosis tinggi?
Ya, suplemen ini memang dokter akan prescribe, akan bagi bantuan, tetapi ia tidak di dalam guideline. Itu semua sebagai sampingan lah untuk pada pesakit. Normally kalau stage 1, stage 2 memang kita advise a patient go for supplement. You're not going to treat a patient, so patient can take their vitamin C or antioxidant and fluid and so on. So doctors are prescribed with that lah. But not in so far the quarantine center. Kalau di quarantine center normally tidak ada apa-apa specific treatment. So but of course we encourage a patient can take a supplement, vitamin C, and so on, but not considered as an official treatment for the patient.
Thank you, Prof.
Okay, thank you. Harap menjawab soalannya.
Oke, Cika sudah paham ya. Oke, selanjutnya mungkin ada lagi dari Yuda ya?
Iya, Bu.
Oke, Yuda dipersilakan bertanya.
Apakah di Malaysia vaksin COVID akan diwajibkan? Terus apakah ada juga yang tidak mau divaksin, Pak?
Oh, okey. Sekarang ini tidak ada satu skala yang kata kita perlu wajib untuk ambil vaksin lagi. Tetapi I think kerajaan Malaysia masih lagi mendapatkan bekalan untuk frontliner terlebih dahulu dan seterusnya kepada public. So, kita belum start lagi sebenarnya di Malaysia, belum start lagi dalam proses vaccination dan kita target pada awal Februari ini. The first group going to receive the vaccination ini adalah frontliner dan kemudian baru kepada public. Okay. Paling awal difahamkan adalah Februari ini. Makanya saya rasa Indonesia lebih ke depan lagi daripada Malaysia. Indonesian sudah mula dapat vaksin. Kami belum lagi. I think last 2 weeks we dah submit our frontliner name tu kepada minister untuk bekalan vaksin. Hopefully dalam Februari ini kita akan dapat vaksin. InsyaAllah.
InsyaAllah. Oke. Ada lagi pertanyaan? Mungkin daripada
Oke, terima kasih, Pak.
Terima kasih. Ya.
Daripada dosen-dosen farmasi, mungkin ada pertanyaan. Bu Rizky.
Prof, apakah kalau di Malaysia, di rumah sakit, kan sebenarnya kita tahu bahwa azithromycin atau golongan macrolide kan punya efek sebagai imunomodulator.
Ya, ya.
Nah, apakah kalau di Malaysia itu ramai juga gitu, maksudnya dokter menggunakan azithromycin bukan sebagai antibiotik tapi sebagai imunomodulator gitu, atau tetap sesuai guideline tadi?
Iya, sebenarnya azithromycin in Malaysia is not really popular. Most of the practitioner will go for the amoxicillin group ataupun cephalosporin group, and the most they will go to the third generations of cephalosporin, which is cefotaxime, yeah. And azithromycin, they will go for the loading dose as a stat dose. They combine with second generation of cephalosporin plus azithromycin as a stat dose, and then later on they are continue with cephalosporin group as well, because macam dosen Rizky tadi bilang dia more toward of modulatory effect later on, so it's a lot of side effect. Even common flu pun, I think most of the doctors they are not go for the macrolide group, they will go for amoxicillin group ataupun cephalosporin group to treat the flu. Azithromycin, erythromycin, azithromycin, all these macrolide group not really popular, but still in the guideline. I've noticed most of the pediatrician, especially most of the internal medicine physician, especially yang dia punya subdisciplinary dia adalah respiratory, they go for the loading dose as a loading dose, a stat dose. Then they go and then maintain with amoxicillin group ataupun cephalosporin group.
Oke, sebab di Indonesia hampir semua pasien itu dapat azithromycin. Jadi yes, jadi ramai di kalangan farmasis bahwa ini kan bukan sebenarnya antibiotik, tidak bisa dipakai sembarangan gitu ya. Jadi khawatirnya ada resistensi gitu. Sedangkan kebanyakan dokter juga berpendapat bahwa azithromycin itu sebenarnya untuk immunomodulatory effect-nya.
Immunomodulatory effect, ya. Sebab itu most of the doctors they go for cephalosporin group. If need immunomodulatory, they will go the corticosteroid. Either they add prednisolone ataupun dexamethasone. They not really go for the azithromycin. So they start with the first line antibiotic. If still it's not working, they add methylprednisolone ataupun dexamethasone. It's an alternative treatment.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. Ya.
Terima kasih Bu Rizky juga Dr. Fadli. Yang lainnya ada yang bertanya lagi?
Benny mau tanya tuh.
Benny, persilakan Bek.
Selamat sore, Prof.
Ya, selamat sore.
Izin saya mau nanya, apakah drive COVID test yang diselenggarakan di MSU itu swab PCR atau antigen ya, atau rapid atau antibody test semacamnya itulah. Terus siapa yang sponsorin, masyarakat yang bayar sendiri atau disponsori oleh MNSU atau pemerintahan Malaysia atau kerajaan Malaysia? Itu pertanyaan.
Ya. Terima kasih. Ini soalan yang bagus nih. Kerajaan Malaysia sekarang ini menganjurkan semua semua pekerja ya, especially pekerja workers yang di factory ataupun mana-mana perusahaan, especially foreigners wajib mengambil test COVID test. So one of the initiative daripada kerajaan Malaysia, especially kepada workers termasuk foreigners, expatriate, kerajaan Malaysia menyediakan biayai ditanggung oleh SOCSO, satu badan yang sebenarnya setiap pekerja akan mencarum, akan every month gajinya dipotong ataupun majikan akan contribute to that fund untuk workers. So now kerajaan menggunakan that fund untuk membiayai all the COVID test. COVID test untuk ni sebenarnya dulu dia go for the rapid test. Rapid test most of the clinician they are not keen to that test, rapid test yang antigen, kerana katanya tidak accurate. Mungkin boleh mendapat false negative ataupun false positive later, not really accurate. The most accurate confirmation test is a PCR. So therefore in Malaysia, the most common test yang public ambil termasuk daripada factory ataupun perusahaan, they go for the PCR test. Cuma sedikit mahal, kosnya tinggi. Jadi most yang company yang mampu dia akan go for the PCR, tetapi company yang sederhana yang ni dia go for the rapid test as a screening. Malaysia mewajibkan sekiranya rapid test tadi positif, maka pesakit itu diwajibkan ulang sekali lagi menggunakan PCR. We call it a confirm PCR. So kadang-kadang company ni berfikir, kalau saya gunakan rapid test dan positif, kena repeat, nanti belanjanya lagi besar. So may as well I go for PCR terus. After all, that patient ini nampaknya ada potensi become positive. That's why most of the company akan request PCR straight away, not for rapid test. Generally, if I put a percentage, 70% public will choose PCR, only 30% will choose rapid test ataupun RTK antigen. So that is request lah, demand. Kalau di Malaysia ini di drive-thru, di MSU Medical Center kita ada drive-thru, satu hari kita menerima di antara 200 pesakit hingga max sampai 600, 800 pesakit. Jadi most popular test yang di request by patient ataupun public adalah PCR. kerana dia more accurate dan lebih spesifik. Even though kita mengambil masa untuk mengeluarkan result itu sekitar 72 jam, 2 hari ataupun 3 hari, 72 jam, berbanding dengan rapid test within 24 hours kita sudah dapat resultnya. Cuma resultnya itu kalau clinician dia more not really keen for that RTK antigen result. Everybody go for the PCR. Even in MSU, our president, Tan Sri Presiden memang bermurah hati minta semua kaki tangan ataupun dosen ataupun staff di MSU ini will go for the test using PCR yang more accurate walaupun dia sedikit mahal berbanding dengan antigen. So saya harap saya menjawab soalannya tadi. Boleh?
Oke, Prof. Fadli.
Oke.
Terima kasih untuk jawabannya. Ada lagi mau ditanyakan? Oke, kalau tidak ada, mungkin kita boleh akhiri untuk acara ini. Dari Pak Beni, ada yang mau disampaikan Pak? Atau mau bertanya?
Dr. Fadli, apakah the MSU Medical Center dah mulai menerima rawatan pesakit COVID atau belum?
Oh ya. Terima kasih. Setakat ini kita belum menerima pesakit walaupun kita sudah ada menerima permintaan daripada pesakit yang nak masuk ke hospital. Kami masih lagi dalam persediaan untuk menerima pesakit COVID. Kerana as I think semua orang tahu, untuk menerima pesakit COVID ini kita harus menyediakan SOP yang sangat ketat agar tidak mengganggu pesakit-pesakit yang non-COVID yang lain. Sebagai contoh, kita harus bersiap sedia daripada PPE-nya, semua staf doktor harus bersiap sedia dengan PPE dan juga pathway-nya dari mana harus kita terima pesakit, bagaimana kita nak transport pesakit ini ke ward dan sebagainya, adakah harus menggunakan iSupport ataupun menggunakan iColics box sahaja, dan bagaimanakah laluannya, adakah laluan ini akan menjadi specially design ataupun specially create for the COVID patient, kerana later on kita kena sanitize laluannya itu nanti, dan kita harus kenal pasti di manakah bilik pesakit itu, dan also we have to look into the negative pressure as well dalam bilik supaya tidak mengganggu ventilation ya, ventilation. Most of the hospital di Malaysia ini dia guna centralized ventilation. So therefore we have to modify a bit, pastikan semua bilik kita ini ada negative pressure, which is udaranya, walaupun kita tahu COVID-19 ini bukan on, dia hanyalah droplet, tapi walau bagaimanapun kita still lagi mengambil kira ventilation. So we have to make sure that udara itu yang daripada aircon itu tidak disirculate kembali ke dalam ruang hospital kita. Harusnya udara itu yang dirty, udara yang sudah kotor tercemar itu straight away keluar, not di dalam circle hospital. Nanti dia akan masuk ke kamar-kamar ataupun bilik pesakit yang non-COVID. So we have to look into this. So therefore we think about using the HEPA filter lah. We have to using exhaust fan. We have to switch off the aircon so that no centralized aircon in our hospital and so on. So I'm in our team. We include the ID physician, we include the engineer, staff nurse, and so on. We have to create ataupun we have to create pathway of the patient. We have to create a donning area. We have to create a doffing area. We have to create a temporary ICU, which is isolated ICU. We have to create a temporary isolation labor room. As you know, the COVID patient, kalau dia full term, nak melahirkan anak, definitely we cannot go for spontaneous kelahiran. We have to go for the Caesar. Kerana spontaneous kelahiran ni akan mengambil masa yang lama. So we need staff nurse, we need the doctors sentiasa rapat dengan pesakit yang so-called sudah infected of COVID. So oleh kerana itu, we cannot go for the normal delivery. That's why we have to go for the cesarean. Because as cesarean normally it takes about 35 minutes to 45 minutes almost is a 1 hour. So there's certain time exposure to the our doctors, our nurses. So that's why the best guideline from the Ministry of Health, kita will go for the cesarean. So with that, in MSU Medical Center, we have to create our temporary so-called OT to take care the cesarean case for the patient. So we target in first weeks of February, hopefully we can able to receive the COVID patient ataupun our own patient already admitted in the ward tiba-tiba bergejala dan disahkan positif, and we have to transfer that patient, isolate that patient to the designated COVID ward. So in Malaysia, we call it hybrid hospital, which is in that particular hospital, they have non-COVID patient, and the same time, we do have COVID patient as well. So we call it hybrid hospital. Malaysia sudah satu hospital yang kita declare as totally COVID hospital, which is Hospital Sungai Buloh. So hopefully menjawab soalan Pak Benny. Okay, terima kasih.
Yeah, I think it's a very tough job ya.
Terima kasih lagi untuk
Ya, tough job ya.
Okay.
Yeah. Kalau di sini Dr. Fadli, the hospitals are very full kan?
Ya saya.
And yeah, the hospital are very full COVID, and many COVID patients also cannot get place in the hospital because some hospitals they cater a few wards for COVID only and ICU etc. So dia tak boleh terima banyak lah. But then I actually told my friends that kalau begitu actually like Indonesian case lah, we should actually balikkan dia. So yang COVID yang kena isolate, yang COVID yang semua ward biasa.
Betul.
Because it's
ya betul. Kebalikan dia. Good idea. Cuma di Malaysia ni pun I think akan ke arah begitu juga. Saya rasa KKM Hospital, Government Hospital dah almost full, roughly 90% over. That's why dia minta private hospital also mengambil langkah untuk menerima COVID patient. So of course they start with they transfer all the non-COVID patient pergi ke the private hospital. So therefore hospital government nanti akan kosong. So COVID patient akan memenuhinya. So that is the first step yang mereka akan buat.
Okay, banyak kerja lagi lah.
Okay, terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Banyak kerja lagi ya betul. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih banyak Prof Fadli untuk masa yang diluangkan kepada kita semua ya. Ini Nopra.
Okey, terima kasih.
Ya, terima kasih semuanya. Oke, mungkin Prof Fadli boleh stop share screen. Kita akan ambil foto bersama dulu. Oke, untuk mahasiswa farmasi JGU boleh buka videonya ya. Kita mau foto bersama, foto virtual. Boleh ya dibuka videonya. Armi, Yuda, Benny. Ya. Emma, Tania, Kamila, So, Prof. Fadli boleh tengok wajah-wajah
Oke.
daripada
Wah, mahasiswanya ganteng-ganteng. Nah.
student-student farmasi JKU. Okay.
Yang
Saya
paling
harap
ganteng
satu hari
namanya
saya
Alhara.
Alhara. Oh, okey. Saya harap satu hari saya dapat pergi ke JGU.
Ya, jemput Prof, jemput.
Ketemu Prof Edi.
Jemput sangat-sangat Prof.
Terima kasih. InsyaAllah.
Bagi
Kalau
lecture
nanti
1 minggu.
dosen-dosen farmasi sama student-student farmasi JJU boleh ke MSU. Boleh ke
Ya,
MSU
jemput.
sama.
Saya pun nak ambil gambar juga.
Oke.
Okey.
1, 2, 3. Oke, lagi sekali. Satu kali lagi ya. 1, 2, 3.
Okey, terima kasih.